Welcome back, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our event talk with the experts panel discussion. I'm super excited to be joined by some incredible experts up on stage with me today, and we're going to have a really awesome discussion. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already, make sure that you fill out our Future of Hybrid Events survey. Nicole's been dropping that link in the chat throughout the event, and you can also find the link in the Accelevents Expo booth. We're running a survey for the next couple of weeks to get some insights from all of you and from other event professionals on what the future of hybrid is going to look like in the end of 2021 and moving into next year. So definitely fill that survey out. You'll be entered to win a $100 Amazon gift card, which we will announce the winner at the next Event Talk Live. Which goes into my second announcement. Mark your calendars for the next Event Talk Live, which is happening on July 15th, the third Thursday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure you keep an eye out on your emails for your invitation to that event. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So I'd love to ask all of my panelists here to introduce themselves. So Aleksandra, do you mind introducing yourself and where you're from?
Not at all. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm Aleksandra. I'm joining actually from Prague, Czech Republic, coming overseas, 9 p.m. over here, right on the clock. I'm currently leading events and experiences at parcelLab, a retail tech company. And before that, I've been working with B2B tech companies for over 7 years, Veeam Software, SEMrush, Userlane, and a few others. So really excited to be here today.
Thank you so much. And Joyce, welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm Joyce Johnson. I'm a 7-time author, speaker, sales champion, and founder of Wise Sales Network, where we host virtual and hybrid events for training and development of sales professionals.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Traci, last but definitely not least.
Oh, pick me, Maddie. I want to go. My name is Traci DePuy. To pronounce my last name and something you will always remember is either Pepe Le Pew or Church Pew. And so that will stick in your head for the rest of the day, I'm sure. But I'm the head of events over at salesforce.org, where we cater events and experiences for the nonprofit and education industries. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm really excited for today's discussion. For our audience, if you have any questions throughout the event, write them down, but hang on to them, because after this session is over at around 3:40 p.m. Eastern Time, we're actually going to exit this session and go into a workshop session where you'll have the opportunity to raise your hand and actually turn on your camera and microphone and ask our speakers questions face to face. You can, of course, use the chat feature if you'd like, and I can read your question off for you, but I wanted to give everyone the opportunity to turn your camera on, turn your microphone on, and chat with our speakers one-on-one in the workshop. So you'll get a push notification for that at 3:40, and I'll let you know where to go at the end. So just hang on to your questions, and we will get started. So obviously, we want to talk a lot about growth acceleration and how we're using virtual and hybrid events as tools. And the very first step is establishing your goals and what you want your attendees to walk away with. So Joyce, I want to start with you. When you first start to plan an event, what process do you go through to determine the specific goals for the event, who you want to reach, and how you're going to help your attendees walk away with value?
You know, first of all, I always start with what's the need, right? What's the need right now? What does our sales individuals and professionals, inspiring salespeople need? And from there, I create a theme out of that need. And so once I create that theme, everything goes around that, because then it's all about the experience. How do we communicate that theme? How do we communicate the message? How do we add value? And we put all those pieces together and determine, okay, now, based on the need of our audience, here's how we can add value, and here's some takeaways they can have. What do we want them to take away from it? Make sure that it added value and it stuck with the theme. And that's just how it goes with that one question to myself. What do they need from us right now? And what can we offer them?
Got it. And Traci, that same question, but also thinking about what kind of questions do you ask the event stakeholders to make sure that you're meeting those goals as well?
Is it bad that the first word that came to mind was why?
No, that's perfect.
Yeah, Joyce, when you're saying need, the first, one of the things that always comes to my mind is what problem are we trying to solve? And that is the same thing as what is that need, right? And then why are we doing this? So those are the things that I need answered. And I swear I asked that 17 different times before I say we're doing any type of event, because my culture is let's create an event. And I'm like, it's the answer for everything. Oh, marketing has a problem. Let's create an event. And I'm like, okay, let's back out of that for a second. But the other thing I wanted to touch on here with goals is I always align my goals back to the values of the company. So however we answer that question, whether it's what's the problem we're trying to solve and why are we doing this, to establish those goals, we always align back for our four values with Salesforce, which is trust, customer success, innovation, and equality. And it all goes back to the themes, which was what Joyce was talking about, in alignment to those four values.
Got it. Oh, that's really important to keep in mind, keeping those core values. So if anyone who has a brand or anything like that, keeping those in mind anytime you do anything. Aleksandra, so how do you go through and determine the goals of your events, and what kind of questions do you ask your event stakeholders?
Yeah, so it's also, I can only agree with the why. Exactly the question I always ask, like, why event? And yeah, I can definitely vouch for the fact that, oh, let's do an event. Oh, can we run a webinar? Can we do this and that? You're like, why? What's the actual value of people attending that? Why would they show up? Can't we do like an ebook or something else? How can we deliver the value? What's unique about it? And then there is also kind of zooming out a little bit, and there is also the let's say commercial part of it, even though we are in-house, right? Events are revenue driving channels. So you define the goals that are aligned with the overall marketing strategy, that are agreed with sales. Okay, how much, let's say, qualified leads we are driving, or how much pipeline should be coming through marketing generated sources. And then you line how much of that is coming through events. And that will also define on your quarterly basis, okay, what you should be running, when you should be running. And then you're also looking at what's the overall marketing team is doing, and make sure that this is aligned. And if your team is running a huge campaign on sustainability, all of a sudden you're not running an event on something that is completely different, something completely out of sense. And if your audience will be looking, they're like, oh, I just received this report and now this event, and they like 1 and 1 make 4 instead of 2. So these are also some of the things that you definitely should be thinking about. And it's really easy to forget about it when everybody's just coming at you like, oh, let's do a webinar, let's do this and that. There should always be a plan behind everything.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So along those same lines, when you're thinking about the goal for the event, what kind of process do you go through to determine the interests of your attendee personas? So you obviously want to attract a specific kind of attendee to your event in order to use it as a tool for growth. So what kind of questions are you asking, and what kind of research are you doing to understand your attendee personas and what they're looking for? And I'll start with Traci this time.
Thankfully, the market that I'm in, I usually go to the same type of audiences. So we lean into education and nonprofit. So I will go from that angle from a corporate environment. Now there's 17,000 different personas within each of those industries. So, get excited from that angle of like, are we actually trying to go to an audience, for example, in the technology field of someone using the technology? Or is this a thought leadership type of segment that we want to go after C-suite investments? So vastly different ways we would approach each audience within that specific sector. But I start asking those questions of what are we trying to achieve and what's the business objective we're trying to go after. And that will actually back me into what is the target market we're going to build. Part of the conversation that I'm having daily right now is I need to build C-suite relationships. So let's have an event. And I'm like, well, the best C-suite engagements that I have seen in my experience is sitting at a bar, having a cocktail, and building your relationship that way. In a virtual world, C-suites don't want to sit in a Zoom and have a conversation. Like it's very topical. It's not informal. You're not going to build the type of relationship that you want. So it has been a true challenge for us this last year to figure out how to lean into that from an event perspective, where I don't think it's the answer. So I'm giving you a very roundabout answer to your question, but I feel like it's very relevant on how we're approaching the different markets from an events lens when that's what you're being requested for.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Joyce, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
You know, it's funny you say the C-suite because we have a panel ourselves coming up from sales to the C-suite. So our audience is always the same, sales professionals, right? And what drives them. I've been in sales for many years. Since I left college, I've sold sports, education, energy, telecom, industrial sales. I've mentored sales professionals. So when I'm talking to salespeople and things, and I'm preparing something for salespeople, I think I have a really good understanding of what they're looking for because I have that same target audience. So maybe because we are an organization focused just on those professionals. Now we do have our nonprofit, Y Sales Student Foundation, sorry. And so when we create our cohort and events for them, then we're doing something a little different, but it's still very sales focused.
Got it. And Aleksandra, what are your thoughts on deciding what your target audience should be and then attracting them?
Well, that definitely comes from who's our main decision maker or who is our buyer persona, and within the company, who should we be targeting? And I worked with multiple products on a kind of for tech companies where there are multiple buyer personas, and each product within this suite or even the same product can be approached by different people. And you want to make sure that the angle that you take with your event, in particular right now, when the space is so oversaturated, it wasn't oversaturated in person, virtually, it took about 2 weeks to get to the same point. So there are so many things happening. The only way you can stand out if you go so niche and so in depth and so kind of targeted to that specific persona that when they see it on their feed or through their emails, they'll be like, oh, that's actually something that I'm struggling with right now. And what the customer success manager struggles right now will be different from head of customer success, or if we're talking C-suite, or someone who is in a brand. Let's say I'm talking about examples that I'm dealing with right now. Is it a pure play brand that only sells online, or is it actually a well-established brand that is setting up their e-commerce operations? So that will be all very, very different specifics. And you want to make sure that your content captures the right angle for this persona. And then your promotional efforts are targeted at this persona. And you're not expecting to cover them all, get them all, cater to them all. No, you're doing it specifically for one segment. And you don't need thousands of people at your event or at your webinar. If there are 30, but they're so targeted, they all are inspired by this topic, you have a successful event.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely important.
Can I jump in? Oh my gosh.
Of course.
So I love what you're saying. If you have never read the book by Priya Parker called The Art of Gathering, I highly recommend it, because what you were just saying, talking about targeting who you're going after, it's quality over quantity. And it really is the growth of what is happening and growing the business and acceleration of this is, I don't care if it's 5 people in your room. And I know that sounds absurd, but having 5 people having a meaningful conversation who are going to go back, and then that could be your biggest deal of the year because you had this conversation in that room and it was quality. So thinking about how you're actually putting this together, who you're going after, and actually building something in that box, which I know we don't like to be in boxes, but it helps us actually craft something so unique that it's actually going to grow the business.
Yeah. And, you know, that's so true, ladies. And, you know, Maddie, so we are all talking from, I'm my own company at this point in planning an event, right? And you guys are planning for companies, but I've also had companies hire me as a consultant for an event, right? And they want to focus the event on one sponsor. And so when you do that, sometimes you don't get the best, you don't get that quality as Traci's speaking of, you know. And for my own personal organization, I'm like, look, we're going to build valuable programs for people. Right. And then the sponsors who are interested and the people will come.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. Well, this is all amazing, really amazing insights. And it segues perfectly into my next question, which is about promotion, about promoting the event. So once you've come up with your goals and you've come up with your attendee persona, who you want to attract, how do you go about promoting the event so that the right people are showing up? How do you leverage your attendees, your speakers, and any other event contributors that you have in order to expand that audience? So actually, I don't remember who I started with last time, so I'm going to pick Aleksandra. Why don't you go first?
So there was this phrase that was hugely popular, I think, in 2019, that content is queen and content is king and distribution is queen. So in this case, I really kind of advise everybody to think about the event as content. Like, event essentially is content, what you create, or what it's a user generated content, if it's a brainstorm or a roundtable discussion. So it means that, yeah, the event is king, but the distribution and how you attract your audience to this event is queen. So this is the part why I'm always like, this is event marketing. This is not just about setting up an event, that's event management, but marketing is actually understanding how you're going to promote, how you're going to get people to this particular event. That ties deeply into understanding who you're targeting this event for, because people who are one persona, they hang out in a different place than who are like in a different industry or on a different level even. Like some industries in particular, let's say SEO, the industry that I used to work before for, that's Twitter and Facebook for some cases. But when I worked for a digital transformation company, they don't know what Twitter is, right? It's all on LinkedIn, or even harder, like you need to go through the other channels. So that's the core understanding. And then also utilizing all of the different and also like creative ideas, how you're going to promote events, down to, let's say you do pre-recorded sessions, take snippets of the audio from that session and seed it on the like as ads on Spotify to the related podcast so people can listen to that. So really come up with some creative solutions, because we are so over just display advertising or promoted post on LinkedIn. That's just eats up your budget, eats up your money, but doesn't necessarily result in anything unless you really got the niche, unless you got really the targeted audience and the targeting correctly. But still, you need to explore. And it's also about community. I can talk forever about that, but let's hand it over to Traci or Joyce.
Yeah, Traci, do you have any thoughts on promotion and how do you best promote your events?
You know, promotion, I loved everything that's been said thus far, because I think the promotion piece is really making sure that communication on what you're doing at the event is clear. So in a physical world, you're like, I just need to get you there, register, make sure you have your hotel, get in the door. And then you can have someone going, hi, I'm your ambassador. Please follow this way. Here's your guide that you should read. And it's like all your self-explanatory things, right? In this virtual world, you log into a web page and you're like, what do I do now? So like, Maddie, loved your welcome video that popped in for today's event that was like, hi, I'm your host, please. Like, those are things that we have learned through this pandemic of like, what is important, the personal touch. But to get people to the door, they're like, okay, so what's the value that I'm receiving from this event? So that in turn, us who are organizing, actually people want to interact with us again, because it's not actually just getting them to this event, which it is, and it's very important, but we want to see them again and again and again, and them growing their relationship with us. So I think it's so important to give them clear, guided instructions on what we want them to do and what's the value when they leave that they should be expecting to see.
Awesome. That's a really good point too. And Joyce, I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say, because you're hosting events for a network that you have. So you're you're really carrying this out. How do you promote your events? And like Traci said, how do you keep people coming back to them?
You know, these ladies hit it. I was just sitting here thinking, I don't really have anything to add to what they said. You know, I think they hit it. I mean, it's pretty much the same tools, the same mind, thought or process of being able to get those people. It is about the long game. It is about building a community. And so, we did try a membership platform at one time, but we weren't ready for that, I felt, and I pulled it. And now we're just building the community and building that CRM and keeping people connected to us. But really, helping them, also asking them things that's important to them, right? And we look at the numbers. I study the numbers a lot. That's, that could be my sales background. I study the numbers a lot. Mm-hmm. So we run an ad. If we send out a newsletter, whatever it is, I'm going to look at the opens, the clicks, the impressions, everything, the engagement, who commented, what they said when they commented, because I'm taking all of that input and insight to help me better to reach the audience moving forward and to retain the audience moving forward.
I actually love that you just started talking about data, because I feel like the event professionals over the last year have become data experts. We now understand GDPR more than you've ever wanted to understand GDPR, and then privacy and how much data you can collect, and the fact that you can't ship things to, businesses because they're not at their office anymore. Like, there's so many nuances to now understanding that you're not going to put a security guard at the door. You need security and protection over your technology and what you're doing. And so you need to build that trust for the people attending your event. So all of a sudden you're an experience creator who has to understand data. And you're like, okay, fantastic. I thought my reg numbers and a 10 number, the basic things that you need to know, but now you're starting to understand the depths of it. And it has become more ingrained as part of an event professional. That is a skill that I look for now as we continue to hire and build our teams.
Absolutely. I have a conference call every Monday with my marketing person that creates our ads and things. And I want to know every ad and every post, who related to them and why.
I mean, data people becoming the favorites. I don't think they've ever experienced that before, but you're like, hey, you're my new best friend.
The data is so important. And I think it really, it lends credence to this idea of growth acceleration and event marketing together, because we have so much data now from our virtual and hybrid events that we can really dig into it and utilize it to enhance those experiences. Yeah. That's awesome.
Just wanted to chime in. I can't, not say that. It's apart from having the data, you actually need to do something with it, and you need to connect the dots. And I love both what Joyce, you were saying, in particular from the sales background and revenue, because that's something that I always look at as well, and like really push people into looking. And Traci, what you mentioned, GDPR, data protection. I mean, I'm from Europe, so it's been always on the agenda. But right now, you don't know where your attendees are tuning in from. You can be a US-based company. You have to follow the rules. Otherwise, you may get in trouble. And there is a certain company being right now like in trouble, so to say, in Europe, and facing potential implications because of that neglection of the rules. And that all falls on the shoulders of event professional, because nobody else is able to actually connect all of that: revenue, data, legal stuff, attendee data, marketing, promotion, post-event, sales metrics. So this is like incredible talent that actually we're looking for. And the demand is super high. But if we can do all of
everything you just listed makes me tired. And we do that on a daily basis.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you're just doing flipping through that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's all very good insights. Thank you all so much. One last question about promotion, and this actually ties really well into this talk about data. how does seasonality and factor into promotion of events? And are you seeing different ups and downs in terms of registrations and attendance for events at different times of the year? Like, I know we all talk about the summertime being kind of a slower time, but how have you seen that? Traci, I'll ask you first.
I feel like our seasonality is the ebb and flow of COVID-19.
Yeah.
and it's weird because you start kind of going, this is what's happening and this is the adoption. And even I will say at the very beginning, like the appetite for virtual events was different than the way it is today. And you've seen digital fatigue kind of take over, but then you're like, okay, is it summer? And everybody's kind of feeling like they want to be free. And then all of a sudden the season's going to change. So seasonality to me is like, how are we adapting? How's the world responding to what's happening in the environment and in even the political environment as well of what's happening? And I know, Aleksandra, you probably have a little bit of like, obviously COVID-19 happening, but on the UK political side, you guys have gotten some interesting things happening over there as well. So I'm interested to even know from you, like how that's adapting to your environment.
Yeah, I'll be happy to chime in. So just from the seasonality perspective, something that hasn't changed even with COVID is that if you are targeting US markets, and because I just do events for all the markets, kind of can see the parallels, US is like always on, always working. It's still, even there is a drop-off rate, but it's not that huge. You just have to make sure you don't put your event on the 4th of July, kind of a rookie mistake for the US market. Yeah, but other than that, really, even in August, people would still be attending maybe an in-person event or virtual, again, as long as all of the other stuff that we talked about before is there. But if we're talking about European markets, let's say Germany in particular, August, just don't even try to email people. Already right now, it's like going down. July, only the first 2 weeks are more or less, but anyways. And I would say it's almost the same for all of the EMEA markets. Yeah, and everybody last year was like, it's COVID, everybody's going to be home, so everybody's going to be willing to attend events. No one wanted to do that. So August, everybody still was on vacation, even if people were just vacationing in their backyard.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting, that international perspective. Joyce, how have you seen things changing, whether it be with COVID or with the summer?
You know, with COVID, I do see where, you know, we expected more from people, but I do think they were like burned out by time they're just, you know, watching the screen so much. I mean, I think this is my third event of the day. I have one more. And so, you know, I think people are beginning to feel that. Now, August is traditionally conference time a lot in the US. And I actually last year had to pivot and go take our conference virtual. We were initially going to be on Bimini Island in the Bahamas. And so once it became virtual, we landed in June. And so we naturally just said June next year. But now we are looking at, is June the time, right? I know a lot of our sales are okay June, but they really want to be on the beach too. So I think June is going to be great. We're doing a lot of testing of the market right now, honestly. When I'm flying around myself, I've been traveling myself quite a bit here the last couple of months. I'm looking to see who's in the airport, why they're in the airport. And I'm having these here, you know, chats with people, right? Talking to them about their why are you out here traveling? What's going on? And so that I can decide, because I have to announce next week if we're going to be at the Atlantis in the Bahamas or if we're going to be at Planet Hollywood in Cancun. And so I need to know if people are really ready to travel and if June's going to be a good time for them. And sitting here right now, Maddie, I'm just going to tell you, I don't know.
You don't know? Oh, wow. It's so uncertain. It's amazing how uncertain things still are, even though there's so much coming out of the United States with, oh, things are opening back up. There still is that uncertainty. Attendees aren't totally convinced yet, I think, on offline events, and everyone has their own factors that they're considering. So it'll be really interesting to see. I'm interested to see what you end up deciding.
I'll let you know, but you know, it will be hybrid. I do know that it will be hybrid. I think that there, I think it's going to be hybrid moving forward. Our conference theme this year is 2021, the new sales era, because I do think that some things are definitely, we're not going back to. I remember when the pandemic first happened, I went and I began to really study the swine flu because I wanted to understand, like say you want to know your present, look at your history. I wanted to understand how the world dealt with that and how long it took us to recover. And so, in my mind, I said, okay, we need 2 solid, years. And so that meant to me really 3 years before we're going to fill up conference doors, right? And so from what I'm seeing now, what I'm seeing, the response, the polls that I'm putting out there, the ads that I'm putting about polls out there to test the market, I think virtually, I think in person will be great. I think some people are definitely going to join me on the beach. I mentioned we had an event in Cancun earlier this year. So I think there's going to be, but it's not going to nearly be what we expect. And so, so as I'm writing deposit checks to hotels, I have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we have a little less than 10 minutes left for this conversation, but I have a couple more questions because I do want to get into the event itself and then kind of post-event activities. So for the event experience itself, what kind of tactics do you use to make your virtual and hybrid events super memorable so that attendees will remember them after the fact, show up next time, and more importantly, invite their friends and family and colleagues and really share that event experience with the rest of their network? Traci, why don't you answer this one first?
Yes. This is the most exciting question. So I think, one of the things I've actually been sitting here thinking about is we've been talking about, future seasonality, what the pressure we have as event professionals. People come to me all the time. Hey, when are we going to do this event? Are we doing it in person? Are you doing this thing? And you're like, well, let me hop out my crystal ball and just go, this is what's going to happen, right? We are supposed to be these magical people who just know what's going to happen. And so I'm like, okay, here's plan A, here's plan B, and here's plan C. Fantastic. Part of that plan, though, is the on-demand content. So you have 2 parts to this. One is I want you to come today because you're going to be able to network with the lovely people in this room, right? Here is the value prop. We want to see each other's faces. I want to have a conversation with you. I want to be able to connect with you on LinkedIn because later I'm going to pick your brain about something we're doing at another event. Put in whatever you want to in that little bracket. Then you've got this other aspect of, I just want to see the content. Maybe you had a cool speaker, maybe there's a specific session or a how-to thing that you want to do. So you're thinking about, I'm registering for this event, not planning to actually attend the event. I just want the content later when you said everything is now available. So there's kind of this new environment that you're trying to plan multiple events, different ways for the experience of the attendee that you're going to have. In this environment, what we have seen over the last 12 months is that you get larger reg numbers, but your attendance rate is about 50% if you don't charge for something. That's about what we're seeing right now in very industry trend market. If you charge, you will get a higher show rate. However, you might have unhappy people that they're paying for an event. So what's the value in which they're paying for that? And what are they taking away from it? Which then I call the surprise and delight moments. You need to have something that is exciting that people are going to walk away and go, oh, crap, I missed that event. I won't miss the next one. Mm-hmm. Whatever that is, you can be creative. And I'm hoping that Joyce is going to have something to insert in here. So I'm passing it to you.
You're right, Traci. We throw everything out except for the kitchen sink. I love platforms. We're giving away gift cards. We're giving away Apple gift cards. Airline gift cards. Last year, we gave away a trip to the Warwick Hotel in the Bahamas. This year we're giving away something to the Atlantis. We're looking at having a cruise line supposed to give us something. And then in addition to that, just being able to play games and have polls and keep it as interactive as possible, which is why platforms like this one is important to help engage people. We're starting with engagement already. We're beginning to put the games, get people registered, 10 days out, getting the speakers to share their content that they give away for free so that people can engage with them and their platforms. So we are pulling, no stops. And I know that last year, our Meet the Recruiter is our fan favorite. and bringing it back this year I think is a good draw for us. And that's because individuals get to learn about, when you talk about the value proposition there, they get to learn how to network with recruiters and talk to recruiters for jobs and things of that nature. And we've had people actually come back and say, based on this platform, this panel, I was able to implement those changes in my life or my resume and career and get that promotion, get that job. So, the panels and are really great, but I know that they also love the giveaways. Everyone loves the giveaways.
Yeah, definitely. Aleksandra, how do you delight your attendees at your virtual and hybrid events?
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with everything what you're saying, and the surprise and delight moments, definitely, or booking a speaker that they will not have a chance to talk to, or they've heard this speaker a lot, but they've never had a chance to just sit and chat with them. Just, 10 people on screen. So this being starstruck moments, like we all still have it probably. It's just finding the right person for this audience. But then another tip, it's a kind of, who knows me, I'm very like metric oriented and all the data and stuff. But there is one thing that I do, which is completely on this kind of emotional side. Before I plan an event, I sit down and think, what do I want my attendees to feel, to say, or to post on social media, to tell their colleague or friend after the doors are closed or like the live stream is over. And I start kind of from there, and it inspires and it kind of leads, okay, what has to happen so that this reaction appears? So this is more in the psychological thing, okay, how you can influence the behavior of people. And I know that my event was a success when I see kind of my imagination being actually posted live, let's say on Twitter or somewhere else. So, and the events where it was like word by word almost were the most successful ones I've ever organized.
You know what, ladies, one thing, we did a poll about why people go to conferences, right? And so, we figured, to do networking, training, development, also for jobs. So in the past where they've said jobs, for this conference in this year, it hasn't been that. But then when we put the ads out there and we put out the Meet the Recruiter ad, it's still the most popular. So, I don't know.
Sometimes it's tough to figure out what our attendees are what they're actually looking for. And maybe the answer is they don't even know themselves. And you have to give them options. Yeah, because if maybe people are thinking, oh, we don't need new jobs this year, but then they see that opportunity and they rethink. So that's very interesting. And that's why it's so cool that we have all of this data at our fingertips, which leads me into my last question. I know we only have a couple of minutes left, but I do want to ask each of you just to really quickly talk about what kind of attendee metrics you look at after the event. What are your most important, like your top 2 attendee metrics you're looking at after an event, and how do you use them moving forward? And I see everyone thinking, so I'll just kind of let whoever's ready to go first.
Time and engagement. How much time did they spend on the platform and did they engage?
Got it. Traci, how about you?
Active attendees. And
Gotcha.
How much pipe is actually in the room.
Okay, very good. And Aleksandra?
Can I move further from just attendance?
Yeah, of course. Any data.
There were, or how many customers, if it was a customer focused event, and then how many of them converted. So it's conversion rate and quality.
Conversion rate, I mean, yes,
Cindy, it's just because there are people who are so active and they will always be posting on the chat, but like they will never convert because maybe they just love your content, but they are not the target audience. So you need to rethink how to attract maybe someone else who actually is converting. Because at the end of the day, it's all really cool in social media posts and people being inspired and so on. But the bottom line kind of matters when you present to the C-level.
Yep, absolutely.
We call that the baton pass with sales. So the metrics that I love is things that I'm influencing. But I'm like, I hand this to you, sales. Go forth and conquer, which then goes back to the goals we talked about at the beginning. If sales is not aligned to the goals of what you're trying to achieve at the event, the baton pass is not going to happen, which means the conversion rate will be low.
Exactly.
Right. And and as the owner of it all at this point, and the seat that I sit in, I feel if they spend the time in our community and they are engaged in our community, I'm going to close them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the sales.
That's
the sales perspective right
Yeah.
there. Awesome. Well, that's a great note to end on. We're not quite done yet, but I did want to stop us here because we're going to move now into our workshop where you'll have the opportunity to chat one-on-one with Aleksandra, Joyce, and Traci. We'll all get into the workshop and I'll call on people to come up and ask questions. And you can also submit your questions through the chat if you're more comfortable with that. So you should be receiving a pop-up notification. You can also exit out of this session and click on the button on the left-hand side that says networking. And if you head over there, you'll see the workshop for the audience Q&A. So we will see you all over there in just a few minutes. And Aleksandra, Joyce, and Traci, thank you so much.
Do we click also?
Yep, I'm going to stop the broadcast right now. We'll see you over there in just a minute.
Okay.
Thank you.